folks, welcome back to the Mind of Brandon, and welcome back to another Sunday of Science and Spirituality. As indicated by the title of this video, a Christian street preacher destroys atheism. I'm not too sure about that, but let's hear what he has to say.
So how can you say if there is no God, in the beginning there was nothing there was no designer, no creator, so how do we get a universe from nothing?
Okay, hold on a second. You're acting like the only two options here are either God exists or something can come from nothing. That's a false dichotomy. There are other options, dude. Now, if we're going off of the up-to-date findings in the field of quantum mechanics, or unified field theory, it turns out that at every single little point in space, there's an underlying fundamental field of energy. It's everywhere. It's in everything. Everything that we perceive as matter, deep down inside at the most microcosmic scale possible, is really just a bunch of teeny tiny little force fields, little fields of energy. Okay? So the vacuum of space, vacuum energy, actually has the ability to produce elementary particles. Elementary meaning they can't be broken down into smaller particles. Okay? Now, we call them particles. That might give the sense of like, teeny tiny little bits of matter or something like that. But what they are more technically is teeny tiny little waves of energy. So you study quantum mechanics, you're going to learn about wave-particle duality. What we perceive as a matter particle is more technically a little wave of energy, a little ripple or a energy vibration, something like that. There's different kinds of elementary particles. Particles like quarks form subatomic particles like protons and neutrons. Protons and neutrons can coalesce to form atoms, which coalesce to form molecules, which coalesce to form the compounds of matter. Okay? So fundamentally, where matter comes from is energy. And energy, as far as we know, cannot be created, nor can it be destroyed. It can only change. Now think about that a second. If energy cannot be created, yet it exists, that means it's always existed. There's always been energy. So we don't need to explain how something can come from nothing. No. Where all these things are coming from is the underlying fundamental energy that exists in space. Okay? Space-time energy. Right? Now, some people do deify that energy. They might call it divine energy, but people also used to deify the sun or the moon or the river or the mountain or the sea, whatever, right? People have this tendency to deify the various aspects of nature, viewing them to be peopled or controlled by sentient beings, and they come up with these anthropomorphic representations of them, symbolic representations of them that don't reflect anything that actually exists in reality.
Well, how can you say, for those of you who say you believe in the Big Bang, I don't personally believe in the Big Bang. For those of you who say you believe in the Big Bang, where was the energy source? What caused it? Something must have gone bang.
Well, the Big Bang Theory was actually not originally called the Big Bang Theory. It was called the hypothesis of the primeval atom. It was someone who disagreed with this hypothesis of the primeval atom, who mockingly referred to it as the Big Bang Theory, which is actually a bit of a misnomer. The event in question was really not all that big. It was quite microscopic, actually, and it did not make a bang. Sound does not travel through the vacuum of space, okay? The idea is there's some hypothetical atom or particle that explodes, setting in motion the formation of the universe, and this explains why we live in an expanding universe, okay? And, since it's expanding, that actually demonstrates that it exists within a larger environment. Okay, so you can picture that, prior to the origins of our universe, there was already a large space that existed and contained vacuum energy, which, we've already established is from vacuum energy that we can get elementary particles, which can bring us subatomic particles, which bring us atoms and molecules, etc. Now, a common source of confusion here has to do with the use of the word universe. Turns out this word universe is actually pretty subject to interpretation, so we do use this word in different ways. A kind of older, I'm tempted to say outdated way of using the word is in reference to the totality of all that exists. So this is where this concept comes from, that the beginning of the universe represents the beginning of all existence, right? That's an older, outdated way of looking at the universe. A more up-to-date way of understanding the universe sees it as this sort of expanding bubble of space-time that's mass-producing galaxies and black holes. Again, since it's expanding, that demonstrates it exists within a larger environment. An environment that's often referred to as the multiverse. We don't know for sure that there's other universes apart from our own, but there probably are. Based on the pattern of evidence that's available to us in this universe, it does make sense that beyond this universe there would be other universes. Think about this a second. Every naturally occurring thing in our universe is produced in multiples. Nothing's really unique. There's multiple stars and planets and asteroids and comets and moons, right? There's all sorts of different galaxies. And of course the pattern continues at the subatomic scale. So just as, naturally occurring phenomena are produced in multiples here in our universe, it makes sense the pattern continues beyond the universe, and there are in fact other universes. Our universe exists within a multiverse. Okay, that's probably what's going on.
Why do we have morals?
Morality is just a bunch of arbitrary subjective nonsense based off nothing more than people's biases, cultural indoctrination, personal opinions, and experiences.
Let me put it another way to you, okay? How do you know that racism is wrong?
There's no such thing as morally right or morally wrong. Racism is neither morally right or morally wrong. Anytime I talk about this, there's always someone who's missing the point. Will say something like, oh, so that means it's okay for me to just shoot you, right? No, saying it's okay to shoot me implies it's morally okay to shoot me. I'm saying there's no such thing as morally okay, just as there's no such thing as morally not okay. But here's the thing, even though there's no such thing as morally right and morally wrong, there is such a thing as factually right and factually wrong. It's factually wrong that all white people are morally superior to all black people. In fact, moral superiority is factually wrong to begin with. It doesn't exist. But it is factually right that white people have the ability to go around enslaving black people and forcing them to do the jobs that white people don't want to do. However, it's also factually right that we have the ability to automate all the jobs that nobody wants to do, which would also be more practical and just better for everyone. I don't mean morally better, I mean it's better for the well-being, for people's health and sanity, etc. In fact, if we were to declare the earth and its resources as the common heritage of all the world's people, updating everyone in the world to the present state of science and technology, automating all the jobs that nobody wants to do, we could give everyone in the world access to food, water, clean air, clothing, shelter, medicine, a relevant education, transportation, entertainment, plumbing, and electricity, all without a price tag, because of course you don't have to pay machines. And this has the potential to create a world in which there's no more war, crime, poverty, starvation, slavery, overpopulation, pollution, or bigotry. So we don't need any set of arbitrary subjective moral values. What we need is to apply the scientific method for social concern.
The final question I've got for the atheist is, who is Jesus Christ?
Well, I never actually met the guy, but going off what it says in the Bible, it does seem that he actually has some pretty practical philosophical teachings. Teachings like, love thy neighbor. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And may the Lord's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Traditional conceptions of heaven, of course, are of a paradise. a place where there's no war, crime, poverty, starvation, slavery, overpopulation, pollution, or bigotry. Sound familiar? If Christians actually put the philosophical teachings of Christ into practice, then the world would be a better place. The problem is they think it's more important to believe the fantastic claims that are being made about Jesus after the fact. Okay, claims that Jesus is born from a virgin, he's the Son of God or God incarnate. He went around performing all manner of miracles, healing the sick, curing the blind, casting out demons, walking on water, turning water into wine, or raising people from the dead. In fact, he himself supposedly arose from the dead 3 days after being executed by Romans for sedition. Okay, these are wild, outlandish claims. So let me ask you something. What's more important? Is it more important to believe all the wild, outlandish claims that others have made about Jesus? Or is it more important to put into practice the philosophical teachings provided by Jesus? What's more important? Now, you got to keep in mind that the outlandish claims being made about Jesus, these kinds of claims are actually pretty common in antiquity, associated with all sorts of different ancient figures, whether they're kings, emperors, various other respected individuals. It was common for people to have stories told about them that were blown out of proportion. They go on these, fantastic adventures, all these miraculous things happen, okay? The idea that someone's born of a virgin, that predates the Jesus story, okay? The idea Jesus is born from a virgin, of course, comes from the idea that he's fulfilling the Jewish prophecy of Emmanuel. Emmanuel, of course, is understood as this coming Messiah figure, a savior who's going to be born of a virgin. Jesus is seen as the fulfillment of that. But where did the Jews get that from? Where did Jews get this idea of the prophecy of Emmanuel? Well, they got it from the Persians. The Persians prophesied the coming of a savior called the Saoshyant. The Saoshyant actually translates as savior. That's what it's understood to mean. It said that the Saoshyant would be born of a virgin. Okay, what about this idea that Jesus is the Son of God or God incarnate? Okay, those kinds of claims are pretty common across different cultures in antiquity too. In Egypt, it was commonly understood that the king was an incarnation of the god Horus. It was also commonly understood that the king was son of the sun god Ra, or Re, however you want to pronounce it. Okay. And of course, there's all sorts of ancient figures and even mythological gods who are understood as healers or exorcists, people who have the ability to raise others from the dead or who themselves arise from the dead, right? These are common claims, okay? So again, I ask, what's more important? Is it more important to believe the wild, outlandish claims that others are making about Jesus, or is it more important to put into practice the philosophical teachings of Jesus? Now, all that being said, I actually do not self-identify as an atheist. I generally try to avoid appropriating ideological labels altogether. But I still thought that that Christian preacher was making some really shitty arguments. Alright, that's it for this video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with other people. If you're interested in watching my future videos, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you all in the next one. So have a good one, guys, and peace.